Welcome to the Badlands, a place I don't think I or anyone I'm going to talk to expected to be. My name is Jared, and for the last 9 months, I've been an out-of-work ad agency senior suit. My last role was the Regional Client Service Director at Grey Singapore, delivering work around Southeast Asia and India. I returned to London last year, fully imagining I'd been in another agency fairly quickly, as had been the case over the last 2 decades, but not so much this time. So I found myself wandering the Badlands. In these 9 months, I've noticed a few odd things in our industry, and I've also noticed a surprising amount of ex-colleagues and clients all in a similar position to me. So I thought it might be helpful and maybe interesting to talk to some of these people, to see how they're doing, discover their experiences, understand what they're looking for, and maybe shine a light on them and their talents. But most importantly, check in with them, as it's a lonely experience being in the Badlands. So please welcome Jayant Savant. Jayant is a highly experienced creative leader based in Mumbai, India. With a stellar career across most of the world's biggest global ad agencies, which he'll tell us about in a second, he actually worked at MNC Saatchi in Mumbai back in 2007, when I was at MNC Saatchi Singapore in 2007. And I remember the Jet Airways campaigns that he was working on. They were my first experience of global and regional work. However, like many other senior creatives, he's experiencing challenging times in India in the creative market. So today we discuss the India market, his approach to working remotely and across borders, and his take on being in the Badlands internationally, and his approach to networking himself internationally, as it's something we can all do these days. So please welcome Jayant Savant. Jayant, how are you?
Hi, Jared. I'm good. And it's lovely to be on your podcast. Really, I've been listening to your other podcasts, and they're like absolutely wonderful. And you've been doing a great job, a
Well,
fantastic job.
that's too kind. Thank you. No, that's too kind. It's funny to think that this thing that I do from South London, someone's listening to in a different continent, in a different country, or you know what I mean? It's such a weird thing, but I guess given the nature of today's society, there's no reason they shouldn't. And I have a look at the analytics from time to time just for fun, and there's some people listening to it in the places that you just wouldn't think. I'm like, why why is that person listening to it in Luxembourg or in El Salvador? Or it's just strange. But so I thank you. And it's funny. I think it was one of my previous guests semi-introduced us, and what I'm also discovering with this is kind of the international connection that exists within our industries, within the marketing industry. You know, you're one connection away from, oh man, I worked with that person back in 2007. And, you know, I think LinkedIn's been great for kind of reconnecting loads of people. And this podcast series I'm doing has also been reconnecting with me with lots of interesting people and new people. And I think when you and I spoke offline, you've got a super interesting story after amongst an amazing career at, like I say, a number of the global ad agencies. So normally the first thing I ask people to do is give everyone listening a bit of a career summary of what you've been doing and where you've worked and some of the amazing stuff you've done. And then we'll get into, I guess, some of the challenging times that exist in India as a market, because what I think my listeners will take is there's similarities and there's a lot of crossover with some of those challenges that you're facing as a senior creative in India. I know that people are experiencing it here in the UK. I know people experience it in Australia and New York and North America. And so I think it's good to hear that it's not just a problem that's faced alone in the UK. It's kind of a global thing that's happening at the moment. So do you want to give everyone listening a bit of a career summary of Jayant Savant, where you've worked and some of the cool stuff you've done?
Oh, thank you once again, Jared. So I'm basically from Mumbai, and I've started my career in Mumbai many years ago. And truth be told, I've been very lucky that I've been back on this opportunity to work with some of the best agencies that we have in India, right from the MSC Saatchis to the Otises to the MCB, Grade. So I've worked across categories, brands, some of the biggest brands in India. I mean, Skodas and the Garniers, Jet Airways, Mahindra. Yeah, I have worked across uh, categories there, and it was a great experience. I mean, because When you work across categories, it sort of widens your horizon as a creative person. And yeah, it was a great learning experience.
Yeah,
So
sure.
having
Go on, mate.
and yeah, and then after working in Mumbai for so many years, I had that itch to move outside the country because it's like you've been working in your comfort zone. You know the market, you know the
Yeah, yeah.
audience, you know how things work, in your country. So for me, I've always been someone who's restless and always tried to challenge myself as a creative person. And that's exactly why I wanted to move outside India and sort of test the waters, in terms of the work, in terms of the market, in terms of the audience, outside my country. Uh, so in 2016 is when I got this great opportunity to join Ogilvy in Dhaka uh, as a creative director on the country's second largest brand, which is a traditional American tobacco, and of course there was a few other brands as well. And so when this opportunity came calling, I was like utterly thrilled, right? Because this is what I was wanting to do. Um, so I went to Dhaka and I started. I had a great team over there. Actually, I had a fantastic team.
Sorry, where
Some
was that, Dan? Where were you, mate? Sorry, where was that?
that was Ogilvy Dhaka,
Right,
Ogilvy
right, right.
Bangladesh. Yeah, yes. I was creative director, and I had a great team, a fabulous team. Um, and I happened, so as I said, I worked on the country's second largest brand, which is British American Tobacco, and that was a very challenging brand to work on.
Yeah,
Apart from that, there was Huawei, there was Perfectly Malmele, Citibank, all these kind of brands. And I did get an opportunity to sort of do a lot of launch campaigns over there. For example, I launched the 2.4 version of the Pilot and Derby cigarettes. I launched the big Mentos for Perfectly Malmele in Bangladesh, which is actually at that point in time was the second country on this planet to launch the big Mentos, right?
right.
So it was a great experience. I also
And
launched handsets for Huawei. In fact, one of our campaigns for GR5 and GR5 Mini Huawei for Huawei, I mean, it did so well in Bangladesh that it was conceptually replicated in, I think, 4 to 5 South Asian markets,
right,
if I
right. Yeah.
remember correctly. So that was something. Yeah, that was an incredible sort of uh, time that I experienced. I lived through, and believe you me, I had a great time in Dhaka. So 2 years I was there, and then I moved to Katmandu. Um, I worked there with the biggest agency in Nepal, Outreach, and we did some really good work. Especially we won a few awards as well. And the one award that is really close to me was winning the Abbeys. The Abbeys, for international listeners, let me give a perspective. Abbeys is one of the biggest creative awards in India,
Right,
held in India, but it's open to India and the South Asian markets, right?
right.
So from South Asia also compete in that for that award show, and we entered from Nepal, and it's like you are when you enter, you're competing with the biggies in India, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So in there, it was a really big thing, and that was the first ever at least for Nepal
Wow.
for the campaign that had lots of delays. So it's like it just sort of uh injects confidence in you, as a creative person when you are sort of fighting with the biggies in India. Because India
Yeah,
is
yeah,
a
for sure.
balanced market, and I mean they're like it's a bullshit when it comes to sort of agencies and clients and stuff. So you may have competing at that level and you win. I think it's an incredible feeling.
Yeah, no,
Um,
that's amazing. I think most of a lot of my ex-colleagues and clients and everything know that I've had the good fortune of living and working in Singapore a few times and working at ad agencies in Singapore on kind of regional work and there's something slightly more satisfying when you're doing stuff in in other countries that you weren't born in or you have that you're kind of a guest in and stuff. it's really satisfying. It's really fulfilling when you're doing amazing work in other markets and other countries. And I have friends here who work on global campaigns and things, and that's equally as exciting and challenging. But I think when you're on the ground in these new countries that you know you're not necessarily from, or maybe a different language or different cultures, different insights, the challenges that are then presented, it's super fulfilling when you do, you know, when you create things that resonate. You know, I'm not an Indonesian woman, but I've developed some campaigns, a lot of campaigns for Indonesian women, targeting Indonesian women. It's so fulfilling when you do cool stuff for completely different markets to you know to what you're used to living in or working in, as you say. So I totally get it. I love it. Absolutely love it. I'm weirdly, I was talking to recruiters when I came back from my time in Singapore, and we were talking about creative and you know work in general, and some of the most amazing stuff I've seen in the last few years came out of India. I had the good fortune of working with my colleagues at Grey in India, and they were developing some amazing stuff for, you know, the clients I looked after, but equally other clients around India and stuff. And genuinely, some of the work that comes out of the Indian market is it's just mind-bendingly good. There's some amazing stuff. So it must be such a challenging market given the quality and the talent. So I understand your kind of desire to go and challenge yourself in other countries as well. I totally get it. It's brilliant. And weirdly, when you and I spoke offline, I was trying to figure out, would this be super useful for people predominantly in the UK, because that's where most of my listeners are. But I think what I quite like is the idea that people listening might think, you know what, I could actually go and work in Europe, or I could go to Asia, or, you know, because we can, right? It's such a universal thing that we do, advertising, marketing, using creativity to kind of solve problems, and there is a universality to it. So so yeah, your story is amazing, Jayant. It's you've worked at all the big names, in my opinion. So at the moment, you're back in Mumbai at the moment, Jayant. I understand, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm currently working as an independent consultant, based out of Mumbai. But truth be told, past technology, today I'm able to connect with clients and agencies uh, outside Mumbai, outside India as well.
Yeah.
So, and I keep telling this to people, especially those who are looking at going independent and solo, and looking for projects in India or outside India, or maybe outside the country. That today, the world is a playground, right?
Yeah, you can do it.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and it's just that you need the hunger and the passion, and it's possible. Trust me, it's possible.
Yeah, and, and,
So
and, and look, I mean, you and I today recording a live podcast. You're in Mumbai, I'm in London, and it's no different to me recording one with someone who was up the road in, you know, centre of London the other day. And I think in today's, like you say, modern technology times, as a creative, as a strategist, as you know, there's certain things that you could do largely from anywhere, right? You can tackle briefs remotely. You can kind of deliver presentations remotely and things. So I was, which is why I just thought when you and I spoke, it'd be super interesting for people to understand your journey, and then this kind of new version of Jayant Savant, kind of working remotely but globally from Mumbai. I think is super interesting. But then there are challenges that come with it, Jayant, right? You know, how do you market yourself internationally? How do you network yourself internationally? Which is why I thought it'd be interesting to talk to you, and maybe you could give some of the insights about how you go about it. Um, I know. I think one of the things you and I discussed offline. Haven't you just come back from somewhere where you were part of an international kind of networking thing? What was that you were doing, Jayant? I think it'd be super interesting for people to hear, because it's the sort of thing that anybody could be doing. You know, I know you were invited, but where have you just come back from? Sorry.
yeah, so I was invited for this conference, this advertising summit in Katmandu for brands and beyond, and the 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 list of of speakers was quite. They were big rock stars, creative rock stars from
Right.
India, from South Asia, from Turkey. So having this opportunity to sort of be a speaker on such a stellar panel was I mean I was humbled, absolutely. So it was a great humbling experience, a learning experience as well.
Yeah.
And just sort of, being able to sort of talk to these people, interact with them. And these are some of the names that, you always hear about, see their work, admire their work, right? But when they're sitting, they're right there in front of you, flesh and blood, and they're talking to
Yeah,
you,
yeah.
they're sort of chit-chatting with you, and you are able to pick their brains, on the work front. I think I felt incredibly lucky, and it
No,
was
it's
a
amazing.
it was a great experience. Really, really, it was a
And
fantastic
equally,
experience.
that's such a good networking experience for you, right? Not in a kind of hardcore I'm networking, but just like you say, your exposure then to international players, and it's something we could all do a lot more of in today's kind of globally connected world. So yeah, I was super inspired when you told me you were off to Kathmandu to do that. Just all those words. I'm going to Kathmandu to do this. It's like that's so interesting, so cool.
And,
I think back to India.
mm,
Like I say, I know you and I know a couple of the same people. I know some amazing creatives in India. Um, I think when you and I spoke, you started to talk to me about some of the challenges and some of the things that you're seeing in India now, and how it is driving maybe some of the more senior creatives slightly to look further afield and kind of change their approach. It'd be good for you just to give my listeners a bit of a summary and insight into India from a hiring point of view and some of the things you're experiencing, because I'm pretty sure they'll resonate and there's a lot of similarities from what I've heard. So, how are you finding job hunting as a consultant now, kind of from a frequency of projects? Like, are the projects coming up, or is it super challenging? Like, what's going on in the India market at the moment?
well, that's a very interesting question, Jared, because right now what's happening is the whole influx of digital happening in India, which is big time. And I'm sure it's in the UK as well, and as much as it's across the world. So that has been a big game changer in more ways than one, right? I mean, so I've been very lucky in the sense that my career has seen both sides of the coin, right? I've seen the traditional, I've seen the TVs and the radios, and I'm also seeing the digital part of it. So now in India, there's been this digital is getting a lot of momentum, and you've been seeing like there's so many independent agencies that are coming up, and when it comes to hiring, right? Um, my observation is, and but this is just my personal viewpoint, that there is something called as title inflation, which is happening in India,
Right.
especially in the digital agencies, right? Because the other day, funny enough, the other day I came across a vacancy ad for an ACD, Associate Creative Director,
Mm-hmm.
and I casually just sort of skimmed through it, and what really hit me and shocked me really was the amount of experience they wanted in a candidate, right? And
Right.
which was just 3 to 4 years, and I was shocked, right?
Right.
Because a 4-year-old ACD, I mean, we all know that you don't have 25-year-old generals in the army, right? And there's a good reason for that.
Yeah.
So you can't be having, and each his own. I mean, I no disrespect to any agency, but my point is, when you have such young lads, in the seat of authority, right? Because it's a seat of huge responsibility. You're leading a team here. You're leading brands here. You are responsible for the brand that you are entrusted with, the work that happens in the brand, a team that is working on the brand. And then there's this whole sort of uh, ecosystem there that you are sort of heading and responsible for. And in my opinion, I've seen that experience is the best teacher, and when you have that with you, then I think you are very equipped to take on this role. And so when I see ACDs with 3 or 4 experience ads, and you see CDs for maybe 6 to 7 years, 8 years at the most, it's a bit unsettling,
Yeah.
because uh, I strongly believe that the kind of process of hiring has a direct impact on the kind of work that has been produced,
For sure.
right? Because the people, because at the end of the day, it's I believe that it's not the fancy hacks or devices that come up with ideas, right? It's the people, and we are in the business of ideas and creativity, and primarily people. And
Yeah, and so it's. I mean, I'm clearly looking from a client service lens here in
yeah,
London, but there's a lot of similarity there. I think
Right.
one thing I notice here, and I've actually talked about title inflation and salary deflation, kind of a trend that exists here in certainly in the UK market. And again, it's kind of these business decisions at financial level driving the need, and then there's almost but we still need to show up with seemingly senior people solving these clients' business problems. So but the two don't marry up. The title doesn't marry up to the money, or the title doesn't, in your case that you're talking about, marry up to the kind of experience level that they're talking about. And I can understand. I totally understand why it's being done at the moment, but I don't think anything good is going to come long term, right? Because if sometimes you can gain that experience quickly, and I'm sure there'll be some brilliant people who are 4, 5, 6 years in, and they could be at that level, but it's quite rare. I think you'd agree it's quite rare to have that exposure in that time to the kind of decision making and the kind of understanding of the creative market and things with only 6, 7, 8 years in, versus someone like you who might be 20 years in. And then there are huge differences when you've had that experience of delivering work globally, regionally, locally. Or it can only be of a benefit. So I totally see it here, and from what I understand from my creative friends, there's a similarity here as well, Jan, and with a weird assumption that younger creatives may be much more digitally savvy, digitally nascent, digitally kind of, I guess maybe the idea that, well, they've grown up with it. I was like, well, that's fine, true, but like you point out, there's still a need for understanding creative ideas, big ideas, brand ideas, brand thoughts, like storytelling. Like, how do you deliver those things in a particular channel is one of the challenges. But you still need big ideas, you still need big thoughts, and you still need the experience that comes with doing it for 20 years before you can only get from doing it for so long. And is that what you're seeing more of now in India, this kind of nod to younger, because they made this idea, the audience we want to go after is digital, so therefore we'll just get younger folk to do it? Is that something you're seeing and experiencing a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely, Jared, because see, there's a perception here that digital is meant for younger people, right? Which is an absolute misnomer. I mean, it's bullocks.
Well, I
So
mean, can I just interject? The funny thing about something like Facebook in the UK, no one under 60 uses Facebook. So there's this, and even Instagram to a degree is probably like 35 plus. Like, so there's this weird, what even is digital? Where is, again, and I'm really sorry to interrupt you. Please continue about India in a second, but it's this idea of wanting to target a specific audience. That's as old as time within our industry, right? That's no different to as it was 30 years ago or 40 years. If you want to go after a particular audience, you go after a particular audience. But this idea that you need the exact replica of that audience to be developing the work to go after that audience, I think that's what's changed a little bit. I'm sorry, Jayan, it was just
no,
making me laugh.
no, I understand that. No, I to some extent I agree, but then you know what? The thing is that when you're creating work, right? I mean, especially in the digital arena, it doesn't matter which media it is, but
Exactly.
you always need a big idea, right? I mean, today
Yeah.
I'm seeing a lot of campaigns, and whenever I talk to these youngsters uh, who are working with digital agencies, most of the conversations revolve around influencers and Instagram reels and stories
Right.
and all that sort of, which are, a small part of the entire uh, gamut,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that cannot be the fulcrum of your campaign,
No.
um, unfortunately. But the thing is, today it's every second idea, and you have the youngsters saying, "Oh, we'll do influencer campaign," but influencer is not the answer, right? I mean, I'm kind of, I mean, then this is just my personal observation. I'm not really seeing those big ideas happening. Um, and some of the work is absolutely mediocre. But then
Yeah.
understandably, because you have people usually who've been reputed, who have no inkling about the masters of the profession, right? And the kind
Right.
of work that they've done in the last 30, 40, 50 years. I mean, it's very important. I believe that you need to see the better work that has been produced in the past. So you know where the bar is, you know what has happened, what kind of ideas have happened. And yeah, as I said earlier, you have a lot of youngsters coming in, and ageism is a big problem in India right now in
Really?
terms of job
Right.
and hiring. Um, and that has sort of digital has sort of
Accelerated it a little bit.
added to the whole
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah.
The
And look,
perception of it.
and it's not just that. I think what we can't do on this podcast, Jan, is sound like just two old men moaning, right? And it's not that. I think there's clearly a recognition that the landscape's changing for sure. I think what I think what I see here is, and I can only talk about the UK at the moment. You're replicating from an India point of view is there's a weird perception that experience doesn't count for much these days because it's all short, fast, quick, and it's a bit throwaway, and that's and like you say, it's a part of it, but if it becomes the only thing that a brand is doing, I think there's a view that that will be a quick fire that burns out quite quickly, right? No one's going to remember that brand in 6 months. No one's going to remember that, and if you're not building that kind of brand building at a consumer level with consistent kind of comms and storytelling, and it's going to get, I don't know. It just all seems a bit throwaway at the moment to me. It's very short-sighted, and it sounds like that's just kind of what you're experiencing a little bit in India as well. Would that be fair?
Yeah, I mean, see, to be very honest, of course, there are some gems in terms of the work
Yeah, yeah, of
that have been
course.
produced. There are gems, obviously, but by and large, I think I'm going to see that there's this whole, like you said, a very myopic view in terms of the approach. But yes, of course, I mean, there are a few pieces of work which are, yeah, resplendent, shining.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
I
that
think
that happening, of course, that's happening in India. Um,
I think what's funny, just to kind of give a little bit of a like the sheer scale of India and the market in India and this, the media market in India is so vast. I mean, just sheer numbers of people, Jayant, right, that exist and you can communicate to in India versus the UK. There are probably there's probably nearly as many people in Mumbai as there are in the whole of the UK. So
right.
and again, so there's from a media point of view. I remember I was part of a conversation with Procter and Gamble, and they were talking about media spends for China, and I realized the number they were talking about for media spend in China, and it just was mind bending. And it was simply because if they didn't invest that level, you're not going to reach the hundreds of millions of people that this thing needed to reach. And I guess India has a similar challenge from a media market point of view. So you can understand why digital becomes a little bit much more accessible for brands to try and get in front of people, given that mobile phones and the digital screen is clearly in everyone's hand these days. But I agree. There's probably, I don't know. We'll see. I guess over time whether that becomes sustainable and whether I've noticed this year in the UK the type of work that gets talked about in that weird internal kind of kind of backslapping, aren't we great? None of it is digital. It's always big outdoor campaigns, just beautiful posters, like beautiful art direction. It's always that stuff that people remember and talk about and get celebrate. So there's something in that it's always going to remain. But how do you navigate it as your career progresses from a seniority? How do you keep yourself relevant and things? And it's a challenge for everyone. It's a challenge for all creatives everywhere. And I know from creative friends here that they're experiencing it too. I think one of the things that do you have what's your kind of approach to kind of marketing yourself, Jan, internationally? How do you go about looking for briefs internationally? Is it all network? Is it doing things like the talk you were doing in Kathmandu? Like, how do you go about it? Because I think I'd like creatives who listen to this and everyone else, but to kind of think, well, actually, I could do that from here. You know what I mean? Like, you can kind of do it from wherever. And so, how do you go about it? If you have any tips for my listeners?
Yeah, so today we are living in the age of technology, right? So it's a wonderful asset. It's a boon, right? So sitting here, I can connect with anybody, virtually anybody in the world. So we have a platform, wonderful platform called LinkedIn, right? And that is something that I I would recommend and I suggest uh, professionals to sort of use it more often. And because that's a great platform for networking, and you know, it just sort of allows you to connect with people wherever they are. And
Oh, of course.
secondly, which
Can
which
I
I've seen,
ask a
yes,
ridiculous question, which is
sure,
going to make me
sure,
sound
sure.
like an idiot? Is LinkedIn big in India? Is it a professional tool in
Yes,
India? Like
yes,
it
yes,
is.
it is.
Yeah, yeah.
It is,
Okay.
it is, it is, it
I
is, it is.
apologize. My job is to ask stupid
No,
questions on this
no,
podcast,
no,
Jayant.
it's big in India. It's big in India, and it's getting popularity. So
Right.
I see professionals from across across the board,
Yeah,
online
yeah.
on LinkedIn in India, seniors, juniors, mid-level, all everyone's there
Right,
on
right, right.
LinkedIn and
So
fairly
you're doing a
active.
lot of you're doing a lot of networking on LinkedIn. You're doing a lot of kind of outreach on LinkedIn. But
Yeah.
are you finding that brands or agencies are open to you working remotely from India and working for them if they're things in Pakistan or Turkey or wherever the example might be? Are you finding there's an openness to you working remotely for these projects? Is that okay? Can
Yeah,
you
yeah,
do that type of stuff? Yeah.
yeah. There is because I one thing I already found and discovered that how that being an outsider, right? When you're working with in different markets, being an outsider, uh, I bring a fresh perspective
Yeah,
to
yeah.
the campaign or the idea of the project, right? And that's one. And secondly, today, this will sound a bit cliche, but the world is shrinking,
Yeah.
right? And networking is happening across in terms of not just in terms of the job market, but also in terms of projects, in terms of work. And I see that happening an awful lot, especially after 2020, the pandemic, in a way,
Yeah.
and a lot of the silver lining, and after the pandemic, there has been a sort of a rise in terms of um, remote working.
Yeah.
And also, I've seen one thing I've already noticed in India is that a lot of senior people are now going solo
Right.
because, yeah, in India, it's the advertising industry, I mean, can be very exhausting in terms of
Yeah.
the long working hours and stuff like that. So going solo is the best way, in terms of it gives the freedom to pick up projects. It gives you sort of a financial freedom as well because the more projects you do, the more money you earn, right? So
Yeah.
so in terms of networking, and to answer your question, yes, LinkedIn is one thing, and one more thing which is very important is always keep your book updated,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because that's the holy grail. That's the holy grail because your portfolio is sort of open doors for you. Doesn't
No,
matter
of
where.
course.
But so it's the holy grail for any creative person.
And just finally on the kind of India piece, do you, the people going solo, like you mentioned, there's much more. You're seeing it with your peers and colleagues, like ex-colleagues, like kind of much more people going kind of freelance or consultancy or solo, as you call it. And is that? Do you think it's being forced on them a little bit as well, Jan? Is that because of the state of the market and the kind of the like you say a creative director can now be someone who's worked there for 6 years versus the 15 that it may have used to have been. Like, are some people being forced into it? Do you think, Jan, or is it much more of a you know what, this is good for me and I can, like you say, I can work globally, I can work wherever I want, blah blah blah. Do you think it's a bit of both?
Yeah, it's a bit of both.
Yeah, yeah,
It's a bit of both because so I've seen people, senior people in the trade especially, who are working and they have quit the job. In fact, a couple of days ago, ex-colleague of mine called me. I was talking to him, and he has quit his job. I won't name the agency, but it's a big network agency. He was a creative director, doing pretty well, but he just quit a couple of months ago, and he's now trying to go solo. So he told me to sort of, understand my point of view. But yeah, so that's one aspect, and the other is, of course, as I said earlier, that the type of hiring that's happening. A lot of youngsters getting the top roles. So
Right.
so maybe a lot of seniors are being weeded out, unfortunately.
Right.
So that's also happening. So I think it's a mix of both that's happening in India. Um, but largely, what I've seen, and on a personal level, I know friends who've been working full time, and they've like quit, and they're doing their own solo stuff, which is incredible. They're doing pretty well.
Well, that's good. So there's weirdly there's like it sounds like there's a bit of a boom freelance solo kind of senior economy that because it gives you the you've got such experience and it's almost like if it's not if you can't if agencies aren't trying to bring it in full time, at least you can kind of dip in and go, you know what, I can work with you on a pitch, I can work with you on a bit of a project that needs delivering. I think that's much easier for agencies to handle at the moment from a cost point of view and a kind of issue, the challenges that the ad agencies are facing around the world. So it sounds like a similar sort of thing where there's a term here that's banded around in the UK, which is kind of fractional, meaning it's essentially part time, as in you can come in and do some project stuff. You might do 2 days a week, or you might just do, 2-3 weeks, short term stuff. And it sounds like there's similar opportunities in India and beyond around South Asia. So, which is, I think, the reason I wanted to do a chat with you, Jan, was I kind of wanted anybody listening to understand or hear that what's going on here feels like, oh my God, it's only going on in the UK. I actually don't think it is. I actually think it's a global thing at the moment. And given my global exposure and kind of working in Asia, I'm seeing it across Australia, New Zealand, Southeast Asia to a degree, but not as much. Certainly India, yourself and a couple of other people I know are kind of seeing a lot of similarities to the UK market. North America, I know, is in a similar sort of place to the UK market. So I kind of wanted people just to hear a podcast with someone living, working in India in the exact same field as what we are working here in London, and kind of hear that a lot of the challenges are the same because it's weirdly reassuring in a weird way, Jayant. Do you know what I mean? Like you don't feel like, oh Christ, it's just me here in London.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
it's
We're
happening
all
to
feeling the
everyone
same boat.
everywhere. Yeah, I think we are, and you and I both had the great pleasure of working at global networks, global agency networks, WPP, Publicis, and it's amazing until it's not, because the global nature of it sometimes has a massive impact on you as an individual, right? As in, someone somewhere in North America might make a decision on a big global piece of business that massively affects you in India or in Asia or Australia, and that's the downside of the big global networks, I guess. But for the most part, yeah, it's I've loved it. I know you have. You've worked at some of the best places as well. I think one of the things I quite like to do as I round out this conversation, Jan, from an ideal role or an ideal thing, like, is there anywhere that you'd love to go and work, or work on projects in a particular market? Is there anything you think, oh, I haven't worked on stuff in North America, or I'd love to go and live in country X, because you never know, Jan, right? It's networks, and so if you can maybe put it out here, we can see if we can spread the word. Is there a particular thing that you'd love to do, or a particular place you'd love to work?
But yeah, so people who know me already know this fact that I've been wanting to move to Istanbul,
Right.
and I've been working on projects uh, from Istanbul, and I've been incredibly lucky because uh, so when I went to Istanbul for the first time in 2016, I uh, I'd been there on a holiday, and when I came back, I had almost made up my mind that this is a place and this is a city that I want to live and work. And so then I started sort of working backwards in terms of what I want to do, what I need to do to sort of move there or work there, in the future. So right from learning the language to sort of understanding their culture,
Wow.
and of course the advertising that happens in this in Islam, in Turkey. So, and luckily for me, and because I'm from India, the language is not much of a problem because since we have over 3,000 words between Turkish
Right.
and Hindi. So
Well, that's
learning the
handy.
language is not a big deal as much as understanding the culture and the work that happens. And so I networked a bit, and I was very lucky that I. So I believe that when you move in countries, right? You if you want to work in a particular country, you sort of need to zero in on the people who are working there in your industry. And you know, Turkey has some great names, but there's one particular name, Mr. Polat, Dr. Polat, who is the most awarded uh, creative guy in the country, who won the first lion for Turkey.
Right.
So I sent him my work, and he loved it. And uh, so when in 2018, when I went to Istanbul again, he was kind enough to sort of meet up with me, and we had a chat and stuff like that. And later on, we started doing projects together. So in fact, recently, I did a pretty big pitch uh, in collaboration with him, and it's a fantastic experience to work with all these the big names.
Right.
And Mr. Dr. Polat has been absolutely kind and a wonderful creative person. So all I can say is that if you want to work abroad, if you want to sort of work in a particular market, you need to do your homework, right? And that's pretty important. And also, if you can get a chance to work with the best in that market, I think that is something that is very, very special because you get to learn a lot.
Yeah.
And I've been very lucky, to be very honest, because working with Mr. Polar, and he was there with me at the summit in
Oh,
Katmandu
he's in
last week.
Kathmandu. Oh, amazing.
Yeah, yeah, and just to sort of have a track with these people, it's incredible. You get to learn a lot. So for me, it's Istanbul, and I've been doing projects there for the last few years now. So I fairly understand the market and the brands. And all I can say is that if you have the urge to work abroad or in any particular market, just go for it because it's a great experience to sort of work outside your country, your comfort zone, and yeah, it's
I
just
couldn't
go
agree
for it.
more. I
Just go
couldn't
for
agree
it.
more. Like I've loved all the agency time I've had in London. Amazing. And then when you go and do it overseas and like you say, different cultures, different markets, different. There's a lot of similarity. And weirdly, one of the things I've learned having lived and worked overseas is just how similar people are all over the world. There's so much similarity between us all, which is just then insane that there's so much conflict in the world. Because a Gen Z target audience in Indonesia is the exact same shit that we talk about as a Gen Z target audience in London. Like, do you know what I mean? There's so much similarity, but then what makes it fascinating is then dialing up and down the cultural nuances, the language nuances, the beautiful languages, beautiful insights around cultures, communities, all that stuff, and it just adds this new layer of excitement to your job when you have the good fortune of working in a completely different market. I think, JM, we're going to manifest that you get to go and work and live in Istanbul because someone who's taken the time to go and learn the language and you're doing projects remotely, I mean, I think you're probably on your way there at some point. You never know what doors might open. So when we post this episode, we'll do a big kind of, hey, anyone in Istanbul needs a super senior creative who's done it all, worked everywhere, and has worked in Nepal and and Kathmandu, and there can't be many people with your kind of CV, Giant. So we'll definitely put that out there. Is there anything you want to say just quickly before we wrap up, or are you good? Because I think it's been a super interesting chat, and I'm excited for my listeners, predominantly in the UK, to kind of hear it, just to kind of give a little sense of the madness that's going on everywhere. Just might make people feel better about themselves, but also might inspire people to think, you know what? I've always wanted to go and work in Spain, or I've always wanted to go and work in Germany, or I've always wanted to go and work in Kathmandu. You've shown that it can be done. So I can't thank you enough for your time, Jan. Is there anything you want to end with? Do you want to put a shout out to anyone, or is it you want to say anything else before we wrap
Yeah,
up?
yeah. So no, I just wanted to say that a big thank you to all my bosses, my colleagues, and whoever here who've helped me grow as a person.
Nice.
And thank you all. Thank you all for sort of being there. And Yeah, and thank you, Jared, for having me because it's, I've been listening to your podcast and it's really incredibly wonderful to sort of learn, you know, um, about industry from so many people from diverse backgrounds. So it's really
That's cool,
wonderful.
man. No, thank you. I think you'll be the first international guest, Jan, which is quite an achievement. And the fact I'll be able to say I'm talking to someone who's worked in Nepal, who was in Kathmandu recently. You know, when I post this out, that's madness. So I'm loving that, absolutely loving that. I think the listeners will be like, this is cool. In that it's you know it's a small world. We forget that, and there's more to be shared, and we can kind of do what we do wherever, and hopefully it might inspire some people, Giant. And if we can do that, then we've had a pretty good day, right? So look, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me. Really appreciate it. I fondly remember the Jet Airways stuff because I remember thinking, I can't believe I'm working on an international airline thing here in Singapore. You know, just madness. So I know you were involved in that back in the day. So it's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I'm pretty sure the listeners will love hearing about your story. So thank you very much, mate.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
No worries.